Imagine waking up tomorrow with every financial problem solved. Your debts are gone. Your bank account is overflowing. Now imagine something stranger. 5 years later, you're broke again, not because the economy collapsed, but because the person who earned the wealth no longer exists. The person spending it never understood how it was created. Lottery winners lose fortunes. Athletes declare bankruptcy. Family empires vanish in 3 generations. Meanwhile, someone else starts with nothing, loses everything, and builds it again. What invisible rule separates people who merely possess money from those who command it? Money is one of the least important parts of becoming wealthy. That sounds absurd, but Niccolo understood something about power most people still fail to recognize 5 centuries later. Power is never protected by possession alone. It is protected by understanding. Wealth, practically the same law. Most people spend their lives learning how to make money. Very few learn how money makes decisions about them. Every financial choice is usually decided long before your wallet ever opens. Tonight, we explore the hidden psychology behind wealth through timeless principles of strategy and human nature. The real question isn't how do people become rich? Why do hardworking people spend decades chasing wealth while others attract opportunity almost effortlessly? Luck and timing matter, but they don't explain the full picture. History is full of people who inherited every advantage and lost it, and people born into poverty who reshaped industries. The difference wasn't intelligence or discipline. It was the invisible framework through which they interpreted reality. Machiavelli rarely wrote about money directly. His focus was power, but replace kingdom with wealth, and his observations become startlingly modern. Wealth is not merely an economic system, it's a psychological one. Money moves through people, and people move through emotion. The first hidden rule: wealth doesn't reward need. It rewards value. The world doesn't reward effort, it rewards usefulness. 2 people can work really hard. One digs holes 12 hours. Another spends 1 hour building software that saves millions of people 5 minutes a day. Markets ask only one question: how valuable is the problem you solved? They rarely compensate suffering, they compensate leverage. Machiavelli observed that a prince who merely worked harder than his rivals didn't necessarily remain in power. One who understood incentives, perception, and timing often won without fighting. The person who creates systems outperforms the person trapped inside them. Picture 2 archers. One fires 1,000 arrows randomly, the other studies the wind and releases 10 perfectly aimed shots. History remembers results, not motion. The market was never measuring sacrifice, it was measuring multiplication. The wealthy shift from "how can I work more?" to "how can 1 hour of work keep producing value after I'm finished?" That shift turns an employee into a builder into an owner into someone whose wealth grows while they sleep. Because systems continue where effort ends. If your income stops the moment you stop working, you own a job. If it continues because you've built assets or systems, you've begun building wealth. But why do so many valuable people remain financially invisible? Brilliant inventors overlooked, talented artists, while others with average ability accumulate fortunes. The answer has almost nothing to do with competence. It has everything to do with perception. The second hidden rule: scarcity. There's a prison with no walls, no guards, no locks. Yet billions lie in it without realizing they're trapped. It's called scarcity. Not the absence of money, but the fear of its absence. A person can own little and think abundantly. Another can own millions and live in constant fear of losing it. Machiavelli knew fear is one of the most powerful political weapons because it quietly changes decisions. A fearful ruler becomes reactive, mistaking survival for victory. When fear becomes your financial advisor, every decision shrinks below your potential. You delay opportunities, avoid calculated risks, accept less than your value because certainty feels safer than possibility. Long before your first paycheck, someone taught you what money meant. Money doesn't grow on trees. Play it safe. These become invisible instructions that filter which opportunities you even notice. Two entrepreneurs both lose their businesses. One says, "I lost everything." The other says, "I lost a company." The first identifies with possessions, the second with capability, which is why some rebuild fortunes after catastrophic failure. Machiavelli called this virtue. The qualities that let someone shape fortune rather than be ruled by it. Fear rarely introduces itself honestly. It disguises itself. Maybe next year. I'm not ready yet. But there is no moment when uncertainty disappears, only a moment when your ability to decide becomes stronger than your need for certainty. Machiavelli argued that excessive caution can be more dangerous than boldness, calculated boldness. Scarcity thinking dismisses small beginnings. Power thinking understands compounding. One small improvement repeated becomes extraordinary over years. Overnight success is one of the most dangerous myths ever created. During financial panic, prices collapse and everyone rushes for the exits, then buys back the same assets months later at higher prices. Machiavelli understood that power belongs to those who stay clear when others are consumed by passion. Power rarely chases. Need chases, desperation chases. Power attracts by building yourself into someone whose value creates opportunities. The strongest negotiator in the room is rarely the loudest. True leverage comes from having options, creating margin, financial, emotional, intellectual, lets you negotiate from strength instead of fear. That is wealth's greatest gift, not luxury, but choice. But once fear no longer dominates your decisions, another invisible enemy appears, quieter, more socially acceptable, and more dangerous, because it feels exactly like success. It is called comfort, the third hidden rule. Comfort. Two men reach a mountain summit. The first smiles. The second studies the horizon. There are higher peaks. Wealth isn't usually destroyed by poverty. It's destroyed by comfort. The moment people believe the game is over, they stop playing it well. Machiavelli warned that power constantly invites new threats. A prince who assumed yesterday's victories guaranteed tomorrow's safety had already begun losing control. The habits that create wealth are rarely the habits that preserve it. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. We rapidly grow accustomed to improved circumstances, and the urgency that fueled our growth fades one comfortable decision at a time. Failure is rarely a dramatic collapse. More often, it's a slow drift. Economies behave like rivers, never the same twice. The people who thrive are students of change. Machiavelli believed fortune favored those who adjusted to new realities. Companies that dominate one decade often disappear in the next. Success introduces ego, and ego isn't confidence. Confidence says, "I can learn." Ego says, "I already know." Machiavelli noted that surrounding yourself only with people who agree with you weakens decision-making. We don't simply accumulate money, we accumulate identities. Small actions compound into beliefs, into habits, habits into outcomes. Consumers ask, "What can I buy?" Builders ask, "What can I create?" For years after planting, bamboo shows nothing above ground while its roots develop beneath. Then rapid growth occurs. Wealth compounds slowly before it compounds dramatically. The people who understand this stay in the game long enough for time to become an ally. If scarcity keeps people from starting and comfort keeps them from growing, one more invisible force remains: human attention. Money no longer simply follows you. In today's world, it follows attention. The fourth hidden rule. Attention, diamond on a deserted island remains a diamond, yet comes almost worthless, because value has never existed in isolation. It exists inside perception and human need. Wealth is created not just because something is valuable, but because enough people recognize that value. And recognition requires attention, now one of the scarcest resources in modern history. Land once determined power, factories then information. Today, attention determines who controls information, but not attention alone. There's a profound difference between becoming famous and becoming respected. One fades quickly, the other compounds for decades. People don't buy products, they buy certainty. An empty restaurant versus one with a line outside changes your assumptions instantly before you've the food. This is social proof, an instinct that also creates market bubbles and panics. Understand the crowd, don't become the crowd. Reputation behaves like compound interest. Every honest decision strengthens future opportunities. Every promise silently raises the cost of future relationships. Wealthy individuals often receive opportunities unavailable to others not because of hidden wealth, but accumulated trust. Machiavelli understood that unpredictable, unreliable rulers ultimately weakened themselves. Power requires credibility. Reacting is the most expensive habit most people never question. A notification appears, a headline creates outrage, and your mind becomes a battlefield controlled by external forces. Deep work is where disproportionate value is created, and the wealthiest thinkers in history protected their ability to focus. An archer surrounded by hundreds shouting contradictory advice eventually follows the loudest voice, not because it's correct, but because it overwhelms concentration. Financial advice arrives the same way. The wealth game rewards clarity, not constant motion. Your attention doesn't just determine what you learn, it determines who you become. Where attention goes, life eventually follows. The fifth hidden rule: time scarcity shapes choices. Comfort weakens growth. Attention directs opportunity, but beneath all of these lies time preference. The ability to sacrifice immediate pleasure for exponentially future freedom. This is where fortunes quietly separate from paychecks. Give a room full of people, identical money and opportunity. 1 year later, the room looks completely different because of how they treated time. People fiercely negotiate over a small discount while giving away entire evenings to distractions they won't remember. The wealthy realize money exists to serve time, not the other way around. Carry water from a river to a village, 1 coin per bucket. Work harder, earn more, until you get sick and the coins stop immediately. Someone else spends years building a pipeline, slow, frustrating, but eventually it flows day and night, even while its creator sleeps. That's the difference between effort and leverage. Humans naturally value immediate rewards over larger future ones. Offered candy now or double tomorrow, most children choose now. The wealthy mentally experience the future more vividly. Acting as to today's decisions are conversations with tomorrow's identity. Compounding feels magical not because the math is mysterious, because consistency is psychologically rare. Most people invest in appearances. The wealthy invest in foundations, knowledge, relationships, health judgment. These rarely produce instant applause but quietly increase every future opportunity. The search for perfect timing has delayed more dreams than lack of talent ever has. Uncertainty discourages the crowd, and where the crowd hesitates, opportunity accumulates. Machiavelli never admired blind courage. He admired informed decisiveness. False urgency destroys judgment. Countdown timers and crisis headlines capture attention that generates profit for someone else. The side that appears desperate usually loses leverage. Sometimes the most profitable action is refusing to be rushed. People rarely desire objects. They desire the feelings those objects promise. Security, respect, freedom. A luxury car signals success but cannot create inner confidence. The truly wealthy buy options instead. Freedom, not luxury, is wealth's highest dividend. Learning compounds faster than almost any financial asset. Money can disappear overnight. Capability rarely does, which is why self-made entrepreneurs recover after failure. Scarcity, comfort, attention, time. 4 are hidden rules so far. But none explain why some people consistently influence others, while equally talented people remain invisible. The answer is older than markets. Human nature. Wealth doesn't flow through spreadsheets first. It flows through people, moved by emotion, status, trust, and meaning. The 6th hidden rule. Trust 2 strangers make you the exact same offer, identical price, identical opportunity. Yet within seconds you've decided which one you trust. Nothing objective changed. Only perception did. Money often flows toward the person who inspires the greatest confidence, not simply the best product. Machiavelli understood this long before branding existed. Authority begins in the minds of other people. Markets are not rational systems. Every chart reflects millions of emotional decisions. People sell because everyone else is selling and buy because optimism feels contagious. Machiavelli knew emotion could be predicted and influenced. Humans don't simply buy objects, they buy meaning. A watch becomes a symbolant. Your reputation is partly the story tell about you when you're not in the room, and stories travel faster than facts. Trying to please everyone often destroys credibility. Machiavelli argued leaders cannot always avoid difficult decisions to preserve popularity. Respect and approval aren't always the same. The owner who avoids every uncomfortable conversation is liked at first, then quietly loses respect. The one who keeps boundaries builds trust through consistency. Emotions spread. Walk into an anxious room and your heartbeat changes. This is emotional contagion, and it explains why exceptional leaders appear composed during uncertainty. Not because calm guarantees victory, but because panic almost guarantees mistakes. Many assume influence comes from speaking well, but listening often matters more. Machiavelli urged rulers to understand the motives of allies and rivals alike, not merely what they said but what they wanted. Money follows usefulness. Usefulness begins with understanding. Status is often misunderstood as dominance, but lasting status is earned through contribution. Authority imposed by force rarely lasts. Authority built on competence proves far more durable. Manipulation eventually expires. Trust compounds. Your reputation arrives before you do. Character quietly shapes first impressions, not perfection, consistency. Machiavelli's enduring insight was that power depends on understanding human nature, not ignoring it. The 7th hidden rule. Identity money follows value. Value grows through trust. Trust grows through character. But the final transformation is the moment a person stops asking, "How do I become rich?" and begins asking, "Who must I become to create for the rest of my life?" Fortunes can be inherited, businesses sold, markets collapse, but identity determines whether success becomes temporary or generational. Imagine every bank account in the world reset to zero tomorrow. Who becomes wealthy again? The truly wealthy would focus on what remains: judgment, reputation, network, discipline. These invisible assets generate nearly every visible fortune, which is why some rebuild after bankruptcy. Founders launch successful companies more than once. Their greatest asset was never capital. It was character shaped into capability. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you're prepared to handle. If someone lacks the psychological capacity to manage significant wealth, sudden money becomes destructive instead of liberating. Athletes who earn tens of millions with little lottery winners' lives have often more chaotic after winning. Machiavelli believed fortune could elevate a person quickly, but only preparation determined whether they could remain there. Money magnifies whatever already exists internally. It rarely transforms it. There are two mirrors every ambitious person eventually faces. The first asks, "How do other people see me?" The second, far harder to escape, asks, "Who am I when no one is watching?" That second mirror quiet determines the first. Public reputation eventually reflects private habits. You gradually become like the people you spend the most time with. Machiavelli understood the strategic importance of alliance. The people surrounding a ruler could strengthen or weaken an entire kingdom. Choose your influences carefully. Eventually, they become your inner voice. Beneath every other investment lies one that influences your ability to think clearly. Give average opportunities to someone with exceptional judgment and patience, and they'll build far more than someone with a great portfolio but no discipline. Knowledge is powerful not because it fills the mind, but because it changes the quality of decisions. The deeper freedom beyond financial independence is the freedom not to betray yourself, to decline opportunities that violate your values, to think independently when crowds panic. If wealth your integrity or your inner stability, the transaction was more expensive than it appeared. Machiavelli warned, "Without wisdom eventually consumes itself." The same is true of wealth. So what separates the person who becomes wealthy once from the person who can build wealth again and again? It isn't luck, timing, or secret information. The deepest difference is identity. One person believes wealth is something to possess. The other understands wealth is someone to become. Possessions can disappear. Identity travels with you. Markets fluctuate. Character remains. Money follows habits. Habits follow beliefs. Beliefs follow identity. Change the identity, and the rest begins to follow. Centuries have passed since Machiavelli wrote about princes, kingdoms, and power. Markets replaced monarchies, algorithms replaced messengers. Yet human nature has barely changed. We still chase certainty, fear loss, and search for shortcuts when the greatest rewards belong to patience. His observations were never really about kings. They were about us. Every morning, each of us inherits an invisible kingdom. Our attention, our time, our character. The question is no longer whether you will build something. You already are. Years from now, your financial life won't simply reflect the economy you lived in. It will reflect the psychology you practiced. So don't ask only, "How can I make more money?" Ask something far more powerful. What kind of person repeatedly creates value, earns trust, thinks independently, and remains calm when everyone else loses direction? Become that person, and wealth stops being an accident. It becomes a consequence. Because in the end, the greatest investment was never your money. It was the mind making every decision behind it. If this documentary challenged the way you think about money and power, don't let it become just another video you watched. Choose one principle from today and apply it this week. Not in month, this week. Then tell us in the comments which hidden wealth rule changed your perspective the most, and why. If you enjoy documentaries that blend philosophy, psychology, and history, subscribe and join us. Every week, we explore the ideas that continue to shape power, success, and human behavior across generations. Remember, the person who earns wealth can lose it. The person who becomes capable of creating wealth can build it.